Guys, welcome back to another video. Here we have a cute little idea that was suggested to me in a YouTube comment. This one right here. The Advanced Wars by Web unit tier list. Not CO tier list, but the unit tier list. This is the first time I've actually seen this kind of video being done. Mostly because I'm like the only guy who does high funds, and if you did this off the basis of standard or fog, it would just be like 5 units that you use, and the other ones would just be like, oh, I don't know, because I never use it. But in high funds, where I actually build a lot of these units, I can have an opinion on them, and I can actually rate them how I think they line up in the high funds roster. So yeah, I think this tier list is probably only really relevant to high funds. I don't think you could really do this for standard or fog. So yeah, I'm really happy I'm really excited to do this video. Honestly, I don't even have an opinion. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna put them. I'm just gonna look at them. I'm just gonna think of a game, and I'm just gonna go, okay, they belong here. I haven't planned any of this. I have no idea like what I'm gonna do, where I'm gonna put them, or anything. This is like literally the first take. So yeah, let's just get into it right away. Okay, so here we go. I'm just gonna do this in the same order that I did in the last video. So I don't know how these are ordered by default. They're just there, I guess. But whatever. Mech. First thing, mech. Okay. Okay, so the thing is, with this whole tier list, I think that a lot of things are gonna be, you know, map dependent, as they usually are. Because like mech is obviously sometimes can be good if there's a lot of mountains and stuff, but usually it's kind of bad. I mean, I don't think it's D tier bad. There are some units which just straight up belong in D tier and you never move them out. But mech can see use sometimes, therefore I'll put it in C tier. But at the end in the review, I'm probably gonna move things around. I might move it around. I don't know. Missiles, yeah, missiles are pretty ass. Yeah, like, is there much more to say? They move like, if they moved like a bit more, maybe they could see some play. But because their movement is just so bad, and their range is just so bad also, combined with the fact that they cost 12,000, they're just not worth it for what they do. So yeah, pretty bad. D tier. Fighters, okay, fighters are basically the perfect counter to a bomber. They're also, even if you're building a fighter, if you counter a bomber, even if the enemy has no more air units, you can still use fighters as really annoying blockers to just create tactics on your opponent, and this can just win you value in of itself. And like your opponent, let's say you have a 1 HP fighter flying around blocking stuff, your opponent's gonna have to build an anti-air to kill that 1 HP fighter, which is extremely annoying, and they're probably not even gonna do it. So they're probably just gonna let you get away with all your tactics. So yeah, fighters are really good. Also, they don't get one-shot by anti-air. If they get hit by an anti-air, they survive the shot, unlike copters, which get one-shotted. Fighters can survive, which is what makes them pretty annoying. They also give you a ton of charge when you use them. They're really fast. They basically hard counter bombers. Yeah, they're pretty good, although they're not meta units. They're not like, you don't see that much play. So yeah, B tier. Bomber? Bomber is... it's either here or here. Is it better than a fighter? I mean... yeah, I think so. Yeah, because a bomber is like a hard counter to a Neo-Tank almost. Because it just straight up one-shots a Neo-Tank, and a Neo-Tank can't touch it, and it costs the same price as a Neo-Tank. And also they're very hype units. They're very... like when I was a kid, I think my favorite unit was a bomber because it just one-shots everything, just very clean, no mess, just hits whatever it hits, dies in one shot. So they were really satisfying to use against the AI, who would never see it coming and never defend themselves. You could just go ahead and sweep the game with bombers. So I think bombers are yeah, I think they're A tier. They're definitely not S tier, but they're really nice units. So yeah. Oh, copters, they gotta go in S tier, I think so, because they're only 9,000. To be able to deploy an air unit for 9,000, which is immune to basically all ground units except an anti-air. It also it can use terrain to its advantage to swap between fronts, and then it can just force the enemy to build anti-airs, which is that's extremely detrimental to the enemy, because then like usually the first player to get off a copter will force the second player to build an anti-air, and that puts the first player in a tactical advantage position. So just being able to do that just for building a unit that costs 9k, that's really good. So copters are S tier. They're really good. Like they literally change the tide of the entire game when you build one. So just a copter being on the map changes everything. So yeah, its mere presence is very strong. So I would say copter's S tier for sure. Transport copter, it's not as cool as a bomber. However, it's probably the best transport unit in the game, honestly. I mean, apart from, landers and black boats are pretty cool too, but these are extremely versatile and extremely useful. It's probably not the best transport unit in the game, but they're definitely better than APCs, right? Because they're faster and they can fly over water and over terrain and stuff, and they can be used as blockers. So yeah, they're pretty cool. We'll leave them in B tier for now. I think they're pretty cool. Yeah, they're definitely cooler than APCs. Battleship. Battleships they're based. They're very cool. They're very based, that's for sure. However, they're extremely expensive for what they do. It's basically just a rocket on the sea, with like 1+1 range and more defense. But I don't really think it's worth the price, to be honest. So I'm kind of pulling it down to C. I don't think it's as useful as a fighter. I think fighters are more useful. Fighters can literally just be used to block battleships from moving in certain situations. And but battleships, and they're a unit that only really see play on certain maps, like only if the situation allows it. But if the situation allows it, any unit can be good. Even pipe runners can be good in certain situations. So just because it can be good in certain situations, I can't justify putting it any higher. So I would say the battleship is like C tier, for what it does. Okay, this is the battleship, right? This is battleship and this is cruiser, right? Or am I just dumb? I'm pretty sure this is the cruiser. Yeah, cruisers suck. They suck. They're literally awful. In Dual Strike, they got a buff and they're pretty good. They basically just one-shot any air unit that touches it. In Dual Strike, they can also do damage to other boats. Like a cruiser could do like 20% damage to a battleship in Dual Strike. And yeah, the cruiser's got a massive buff in Dual Strike. But in Advanced Wars by Web, they actually use Advanced Wars 2 cruisers, which suck. They basically are an anti-air on the sea that costs 18k, so 10k more than normal anti-air. However, they get killed. They get completely totaled by battle copters. Literally, copters total these things. Even though this is supposed to counter air units, the air units, it has to like run away from air units, because the air units are usually much more mobile than a cruiser, and so it just ends up that the cruiser, which is supposed to kill the air units, actually just ends up becoming a target for the air units, which is just so stupid. It's supposed to hard counter air units, but it just becomes a target instead. The only thing it's useful for is killing subs. It's the best thing to kill a sub, and that's it. So it's extremely situational. So yeah, D tier. They suck, man. Like it's just a terrible unit. If it was like it just hard countered all air units, if it was like Dual Strike cruisers that we had on Advanced Wars by Web, then maybe I'd put it a bit higher. I'd probably put it like up here or something. But here, it's just crap. They're just crap. Like it should hard counter air units. Subs are pretty cool, but they're also pretty useless. They're basically just there to kill battleships. Like your opponent builds a battleship, you may see someone build a sub to try and go after the battleship. But other than that, you'll never really see a sub get built. Like the way naval battles usually work is somebody at first will build a battleship, then somebody else will build a sub, and then the guy who built the battleship will build a cruiser, and then you'll have that kind of thing going on. And that's how naval battles usually go. But the winner in that situation is the one with the battleship, because the battleship is the unit that can attack ground units and can actually like change the tide of the game in some sort of way. Person with the cruiser can't really do anything. The cruiser is just like, it's just there to kill the sub. The sub is just there to kill the battleship. So I don't think subs are all that great. I don't think they're as bad as cruisers, because at least they do their job. of killing battleships very well. They're also very good at killing other boats. However, they don't one-shot. Like, so if you have a lander, it like sometimes just doesn't, it barely doesn't one-shot, which is super annoying. So yeah, and if a lander survives with 1 HP, it basically gets away, so it has to get hit twice by the sub. So yeah, subs are not that great. Naval units in general aren't that great. Unfortunately, like, even though they're the most expensive units in the game, they're not that great. So next we have the lander. Lander is pretty good. I like landers. I really like maps where you start off with a lander and you get to like shuttle your units across. That's really nice because like the cost of landers is pretty high. They cost like 12k, something like that. So but they allow you to transport 2 land units at once, which is really good. So they're pretty cool, and they have pretty good defense. You can only really kill these with like usually they get killed by copters or something, or swarmed, or they just run out of fuel. So they're really cool. They're really neat units. Like probably the best transport unit, I guess, if there's a lot of water on the map. So yeah, I think landers are pretty cool. I think they deserve beast here. They're definitely better than these units for what they do. They're definitely more valuable. Okay, infantry. Infantry has got to be S tier. I think infantry is probably the most important unit in the game. It's just the most base, like the most versatile, the most useful, and they're basically like pawns in chess. That they can be really like valueless, but they can also be extremely valuable. In certain situations, infantry are so valuable. They're also so easy to spam. You can just spit them out. Like, they only cost 1k. Every single turn, you're gonna see infantry being built. They're basically the bread and butter of Advanced Wars, and for a good reason. Like, if you had an army with no infantry in it, your army can't really threaten any captures, and it can't really threaten, it can't really make threats. It doesn't really matter if you kill all the units in all your opponent's units. If you can't capture anything, they're just gonna build their units back up and fight back. So infantry are extremely valuable units. They allow you to make huge threats. Therefore, they're really useful, and you can use them for anything because they're only worth 1k, and they just don't have much value. You can just use them as walls. You can use them as fodder. There's so many things that you can do with infantry. Therefore, infantry are they're awesome. They're like, it's the best unit in the game probably. I don't see what else could be better. Anyway, next unit is recon. Recons are awesome. Recons are underrated. People need to use more recons, even outside of fog. In high funds in particular, recons are amazing. They're so, like, because they only cost 4k, they're so fast, and interrupting caps in high funds is extremely damaging to the enemy's economy. So more often than not, it's very worth it just to build a recon and just send it, and just sack it for like 1 infantry that had a job of a chain cap or something. In this case, the recon is more than paid for itself because it will interrupt at least like 2, 4, 3 turns of captures or something. And in that in of itself, also, you get your recon usually will get killed once it kills the infantry. So you'll get your charge before the enemy gets their charge. So yeah, I'm a big fan of recons, especially in high fun. I think even in the standard play, they can still be utilized. But in high funds in particular, they're very good and very underrated, and you should use more of them. Especially if you're Sturm. If you're Sturm, you can really ruin someone's day by using these things early on in the game. You can use them. You can just interrupt your opponent's entire cap. You can just fuck up their entire cap phase with these things. They are so deadly. So yeah, recons are based, but they're only really good in the early game. I wouldn't really build them late game. Late game, you should probably build out this stuff. But early game, they're really nice to get out quickly and just fuck up your opponent's cap phase. Highly recommend spamming more recons. Anyway, next, APC. APC kind of sucks. I mean, yeah, it can refuel shit, but it runs on land, and you can get some good tactics off with APCs, but I'm honestly, I don't know where I should put it, here or here. I mean, look, they're definitely more useful than mechs. In fact, battleships are better than mechs, I think. But mechs are probably better than subs. APCs are definitely more useful than mechs. Are they better than battleships? Probably, yeah. I would say we could probably put the APC up here, but not as high as a transport. I think transport copters are a little bit better for what they do. So I'm thinking of, yeah, APC can be here. Having the ability to refuel is also really nice. So, yeah, I'll put it here for now. Tank, okay, tank is another bread and butter unit. It's got to go in S tier. They're just so useful. They're really good value for money. Only 7k for that. Like basically infantry can't touch it, anti-air can't touch it, recons can't touch it, and then it just basically totals any of those units I just mentioned. Artillery, it totals artillery if it hits it. It can make a lot of threats for very cheap, which means it's very good. Is it better than copters? Now that's a good question. It's definitely not better than infantry. Infantry is definitely the best unit of these. But is it better than copters? I think maybe it is. I think it is better than copters. Even though like in a fight, these two, like copters counter tanks. In the grand scheme of things, I think overall tank is a better value for money unit than a copter. Because tanks also, as soon as you build a tank, your opponent has to react to it. Your opponent also has to build a tank or something, or a copter or whatever. You have to react to it, and it's very fast. It has 6 movement. It can threaten a ton of things. It can interrupt caps. It's even better at interrupting caps than a recon is. So yeah, I think tanks are I think tanks are one of the best units in the game for sure. They're just the meta. They're also just the meta. So they're just like they're just the meta. Like, so you can't really argue that tanks are really good. Medium tanks, I think they're around here somewhere. I don't think they're as good as I think recons are better than medium tanks, honestly. As for what they do, value for money. Medium tanks, they're a very good unit for let's say your enemy has like a whole bunch of tanks coming in, and you can't really match the amount of tanks they have, but you can build a medium tank, and then that medium tank can't be touched by your enemy's tanks. So you can then like thwart off your enemy's attack by building medium tanks. And this is usually how you'll see medium tanks being used. They're because they only have 5 movement as opposed to tanks and neo tanks 6. They're mostly used for defending. They're kind of like a get off of me kind of unit. And then eventually they can move forward and eventually counterattack the enemy once they've backed off because they didn't have any response to the medium tank. Now the enemy would have to have an artillery or medium tank or neo tank of their own or air units to counter this thing. They can't just attack your base with only tanks because medium tanks would respond to the tanks and the tanks can't touch it. But I don't think it's as useful as recons are in the early game. I don't really think you want to be in a position where your base is getting attacked that you need to build a medium tank anyway. So if you're playing well, you probably won't even need to build a medium tank at any point. So yeah, I'm gonna put it. I might even move it down to B tier, honestly. I don't think that they're all that useful. I mean, or maybe I should move fighter up. Because I think fighter and medium tank are kind of on like the same level of usefulness. But I don't know whether they both belong in A or whether they both belong in B. I'm gonna leave him here. I'm for now. I'm actually gonna move fighter up to A tier because I think fighters are really useful for more than one reason. The more that one unit can do, the more useful I think it is. So fighters are definitely useful. So I'd put it up to A tier. If I'm gonna put medium tank in A tier, I think I should probably put fighter in A tier too. Okay, anti-air. Anti-air are an amazing unit. They're extremely 8k to basically hard counter any air unit. That's amazing. Like, it's really cheap. And it's really effective against air units. Like, they completely destroy battlecopters. They just one-shot battlecopters straight up dead. Bombers, they can even counter bombers, which is a 22k unit. A bomber, if this anti-air hits the bomber first, the bomber is basically dead. It usually doesn't kill it in one shot, but it will total it down to like 2 HP, and it's basically useless at this point. So just a unit that's worth 8k being able to counter like all air units. That's really good. In fact, I probably put anti-air up here. Maybe even above tank. I don't know. But anti-air is a very, very good unit. Yeah. What else to say about anti-airs? They are also wall breakers. So they basically do a lot more damage to infantry than what tanks do. So enemy infantry on planes can get one-shotted by an anti-air, but they can't get one-shotted by a tank. Therefore, you can go in, kill the infantry, and then your other units can actually get in and attack more stuff. So they can be used to create more tactical opportunities for yourself. Therefore, very good. So anything that one-shots anything else is very good. They do the same amount of damage to infantry as what medium tanks do. Medium tanks and anti-air, they do the same damage to infantry. There's a little fact for you guys. Okay, Neotank. Neotanks are mega based. I love Neotanks. However, I don't think I can put them up here. I would love to put them up here because I'm kind of biased. I love Neotanks. They're one of my favorite units personally, but do I think, like, critically looking at them, do I actually think that they're that good? Not really, to be honest. I mean, if it's a map with like 60k funds, yeah, sure, then they'd be up here for sure, because they can just create so many threats so quickly. That makes them really good in a matchup like that. However, in most situations, it's usually about spamming smaller units and having lots of smaller units as opposed to having a medium tank. However, they are wall breakers, and they can one-shot tanks. They can one-shot this, almost one-shot this. It can one-shot this if it has a firepower boost. I think it's gonna go here actually, above the recon for sure, probably below the bomber for now. Yeah, I think it's gonna go here, and I'll review it afterwards. Artillery, okay, artillery are super awesome. Whether or not they're S tier or not, I don't know. I think they're probably here just because of how slow they are. I mean, they're extremely useful, they're extremely versatile, and they can bait anything they hit, like any ground unit they hit, they're gonna do really good damage to it. Even if they hit Neotanks, and they only cost 6k, they're mega cheap. So, yeah, they're really good units for sure, but they're slow. So if you want to use them, you have to waste like a few turns of time, and you give your opponent some breathing room when you build them. So that's the only downside to artillery. But for the price and for what they do, they're really cool. Yeah, they're better than bombers for sure. They're better than all these units, I think. For like just value wise, like what you get, what you pay for, and what you get. Artillery are really cool, especially if you're grit. If you're grit, you can just build basically only artillery in standard mode, and just like you just build an untouchable wall of these things. Yeah, artillery are yeah, it's an amazing unit. A tier, maybe I'll move it to S tier later, I don't know. Rockets, okay. Now we're going out of the good units and we're going into like the mediocre units. I mean, rockets, they're another unit which can be useful in certain situations, but usually they're not. Usually it's better just to build like something quick that can get to the front lines and create threats very quickly. Rockets are usually quite slow to the party, just like artillery, but I think artillery is better value for money. 6k for one of these as opposed to 15k for one of these, and these only fire one more square, so they fire from 3, 4, and 5 squares away. So they have 3 squares where they can hit, whereas artillery has only 2, but they're just a bit closer. Rockets can fire further, but you can also get into range of these. Also, their defense is really bad. Like, if a tank gets in, they can just get totaled by the tank. If a recon gets in, anything that hits the rocket just totals. Even infantry can, like, kind of whittle down a rocket. So I don't think rockets are all that great, although I do think they're better than battleships and mechs and stuff. They can see some play in certain situations, but they are just... Usually you won't see much play from rockets. They usually only really see play if the map allows it. So they're not so great, unlike tanks and infantry and all these guys, which you can use on basically any map and they're always good. This is like situationally good, and even then it's still probably not that good anyway. So yeah, probably B tier for rockets. I probably won't even move it later. Black Bomb is literally banned in like... It's literally banned in like every single game you play. But let's say it was not banned. In high funds, it would be mega broken, right? Because you could just build it for 25k, send it in, and then just hit all of your enemy's valuable units, I imagine. But it's hard to imagine because I don't really have experience using these. I think I've probably, like, in the time I played Advanced Wars by Web, I've played like some friendly games. I've probably set off like 2 black bombs ever in 2 years. So I don't know. I think that they would go in A rank. I mean, I don't think there is a, like, are they in the same tier as infantry and tanks and anti-air? I think the reason that they're banned is mostly just because they're so annoying, and like if they are allowed, then the game kind of revolves around them. And they're just people didn't want that, so I think that's why they're banned, as opposed to them just being so good. Or I could be completely wrong. Honestly, I don't really know what to say about black bombs. I don't know if they're mega broken or if they're just mediocre. I'm gonna put them in A tier, but I'm gonna put them like probably here, just behind the artillery. I think this is a good place for it, to be honest. Although I will probably change it in the review. Uzium, is this thing even in Advanced Wars by Web? I don't even think it is. Yeah, I don't think it's in Advanced Wars by Web. This thing can only move like one space, but whatever it moves onto, it just insta kills it, right? And it was basically a gimmicky unit from Advanced Wars Dual Strike. But okay, let's say that you could use the Uzium in competitive play. I don't think it would be that good unless you were on like a really like gimmicky sort of map. I don't think it would be that good because they're just too slow. They move like one space. They don't even get movement bonuses if I recall correctly. Like if you use like Adder's power, Uzium still has one movement at the end of the day. It doesn't get an extra movement. So I think Uzium just permanently sucks. And even if you could build them for like 1k, like the same price as an infantry, I'd probably still just pick the infantry because the infantry can just do more and it's just 3 times faster than an Uzium. So yeah, sorry Uzium, but yeah, Uzium kind of sucks. Does it suck more than a cruiser? Yeah, probably. It probably does. Okay, stealth. Stealth are always banned in high funds because if they weren't, you just spam them like hell. So yeah, they're banned, but they're pretty good in standard. Like you basically can like checkmate your opponent with these things by basically taking control of your enemy's airports, so they have no means to build fighters. Because the only way to counter a stealth is with either another stealth or with a fighter. And if your enemy can't build stealth or fighters, i.e. they don't have an airport, then you can basically just build stealths and your opponent can't touch your stealths, like no matter what they do. So the only way they could probably deal with it is if they trap it and have it run out of fuel or something. But yeah, stealths, they're really expensive, but once they get set up, they basically can't be touched by the opponent. And they can be used to do all sorts of like sneaky, clever stuff. They're quite a gimmicky unit. But how do they involve themselves in the meta? I'd say they're probably up here. I think they're probably a little bit better than bombers, just because of like how forcing of a unit they are. They basically, like, as soon as your opponent builds a stealth, you have to change up your entire plan, and it can mess up your entire plan as soon as your opponent builds a stealth. You kind of have to like cater your play to deal with their stealth now. So they're very influential, and that's quite important. So I would say, yeah, A rank for the stealth for sure. I don't think it's S rank though, because it's probably better just to build fast units and just kaplow the enemy. But the stealth in of itself is a really good unit. So yeah, I'd put it in A tier, probably above the bomber and neo tank. Yeah. Okay, carriers are okay. They're kind of ass, not gonna lie, but they're another unit that's useful in certain situations, but not useful most of the time. It's not. So and they're also an extremely late game unit. They can see some play, but it's quite rare. Usually they're used to lock down enemy airports. So sometimes you'll get a port which if you build a carrier on that port, the enemy's airport just can't build air units, and so their air units just stop. There are no air units for your opponent. In that case, they're pretty good, but I think they're better than missiles for sure. I think they're actually better than all these. So I'm going to put them in C tier. However, I'm going to put them... I don't think they're as good as mechs. It's between the sub and the carrier. I think that the carrier is probably better because it's an offensive unit. Like you build a carrier in order to create some sort of positional advantage for yourself, whereas the sub is just a response unit to a battleship. And responding is not as good as creating initiative. So I would say creating initiative, like, so I would put the carrier above the sub here. Yeah, that's what I would do. I'm gonna put the carrier here. I don't think I'll change this. Black boats are pretty sick. Black boats are sick. They can transport. They're a transport unit like the battle cop, no, the transport copter and the APC, but they can move two infantry, not just one, two. And they're really fast as well. They move 7, not 6, and they can repair other units, and they have pretty good defense. So, and they're only 7,500, which is an awkward number. So they basically cost 8k kind of, because 7k is not enough to build one, but they're very versatile, and they're just very useful. So I would put them like, yeah, I put them here, to be honest. Black boats are really sick. When you actually get the chance to build one. However, yeah, they need to be on maps that have obviously islands that you transport your infantry to capture stuff. In which case, it might be better to build transport copters still, but yeah. If you have a black boat, like on maps like Viridia Aqua or maps like Odyssey Zero, any of those like heavy naval maps, black boats are amazing. They're just so good at like transporting units, healing stuff up, creating tactics. You can block things with it, and they have pretty good defense. So yeah, I think black boats are pretty good units, obviously. So I'll put them. Yeah, I'll put them here. I don't think they deserve. I don't think it should be in this tier because these units can just create so much more threats. Black boats don't really create that much threat. They're just really cool to use and really cost effective, but they don't really threaten that much. So yeah, B tier for black boats, but they're pretty cool. Pipe runners is just a meme unit, right? Yeah, it's literally just a meme unit. So like pipe runners usually just because it can't even move off of a base. It can only move on pipes and bases. So if you build it from your base, if your base doesn't have any pipes next to it, it literally just locks your own base, and it's ridiculous. Like these things should be able to move on land and just be like basically better rockets. But unfortunately, they can only move on pipes, which means that you can't really build one without base locking yourself. So they're the most common unit to build in order to taunt your opponent. So let's say you win a game and it's completely over, your opponent can't do anything, it doesn't matter what happens at this point. You can just build pipe runners on your bases just to be a dick to your opponent. And this is basically the Advanced Wars equivalent of a taunt. So yeah, pipe runners are mostly just used for that purpose. They're just a meme unit that you build in order to taunt your opponent. However, it is quite funny. Like usually it's between pipe runners and missiles. These are the two like meme taunting units that people build. Missiles are slightly cheaper, so you probably will see more of those, and they can also actually move off the base. But pipe runner is pretty fun to see on your enemy's bases when they're winning. So yeah, it's a meme unit. I can't justify putting it any higher, so I'm gonna put it here in D. If there was like a map with obviously lots of pipes that you could actually move your pipe runners around, then they could actually see some play. They could be pretty good maybe. But that's obviously extremely map dependent, and we're not really going to go off of that, because if that was the case, we'd put Uzium in S tier on this map, right? So I'm not gonna be putting pipe runners on any higher than D tier. And last but not least, we have the mega tank, which is I'd say it's like here-ish. Yeah, because it's really good, but it's extremely expensive. Like, its firepower is insane. It basically just one-shots any fucking thing it attacks. Any ground unit that it attacks, it just gets one-shotted. Even Neo tanks just get one-shotted by this thing. However, it only has 3 ammo, it only has 4 movement, and it's super slow. So they're definitely not a good attacking unit. They're definitely a get-off-me sort of unit. Once your base is getting overrun, you usually build one of these to try and counterattack. But yeah, that's their main purpose, and also you don't really want to be in a position where your base is getting attacked anyway. So if you're playing the game well, chances are you won't need to be building mega tanks anyway. So that's why I don't rate them so high, although they can be pretty useful. They can be pretty good against Kanbei in high funds, because they're basically the same price as a Kanbei Neo tank, but they just have so much firepower. They can stand up to Kanbei's Neo tanks with this tank of your own. You just have to progress a bit slowly, but you can eventually make progress against Kanbei by spamming these things out. So and their defense is insane. Like artillery, Rockets, these things need to get hit by like 5, 6 rockets in order to die. Whereas like Neo tanks will just straight up get 2-shot by a rocket. These things need to get hit 5, 6 times. They have insane defense, and you put them on top of forests or cities, they just become like just beef buses. Like you just can't take these things down. Yeah, Mega Tank's pretty good. Okay, so now I'm gonna just do a final review to just to test like if I put everything in the right place. I mean, infantry is definitely at the top. That's a certainty. Infantry are hella based. Tanks also mega based. Anti-air, yeah. It's just a question of, is an anti-air better or is a copter better? Like, if we look at it in terms of like which one can make the most threats, I mean, I guess a copter can make more threats, but it is slightly cheaper. Although anti-air can also attack tank, they can also fight tanks a little bit. They can do like 30% damage to a tank. They're not just like anti-air. They just completely hard counter a copter. A copter cannot touch an anti-air. But an anti-air, like, it's countered by a tank, but it can kind of fight a tank. Like, if a tank has got like 4 HP, and you've got a full HP anti-air, you can just slam it into the tank, and you'll do like 3 HP to the tank, and maybe even kill it off. Like, anti-air just it hard counters, it counters the hell out of air units, and it gets beaten by tanks, but not so hard. So, yeah, I would say the anti-air is better than the copter. I would say anti-air is better than copter, and it can wall break. Copters can't wall break. Copters don't do enough damage to infantry. So yeah, I'll leave this like this. S tier is like this, and I'm pretty sure this is it. Artillery. Now the question with artillery is, do they deserve to be an S tier? And I don't think they do. I don't think they do because they're too slow, and speed is very important. Because an artillery is an indirect unit, so it has to move, then shoot. It can't just move and shoot in the same turn like direct units can. So that's a weakness of indirect units. That loses time, and time is extremely valuable. So that's why I put artillery here. Although I still think artillery are very good for what they do. They do a ton of damage, and you can put them in very clever positions to create walls. You can create impenetrable fortresses with these things that your opponent can't touch. They're very cheap. They only cost 6k. So they're a very good unit, but I just don't think they're worthy of S tier. They're almost there, but like not quite. If they had like 6 movement or something, maybe I would consider it. But yeah, I think they're really good, top of A tier. Black bombs again. Black bombs, I mean, like, let's say, like, if you used black bombs, your opponent's just gonna separate all their units, right? So a good player playing against the black bomb would just disperse everything. So yeah, I would probably put this a little bit lower, actually. It's definitely useful. It's definitely got its uses, and you could definitely get a lot of value out of it. But let's say your opponent has got a bunch of tanks instead of, like, let's say these, like, you're playing high funds. Your opponent hasn't built many Neo tanks and stuff. You could probably put the black bomb a bit lower. Black bombs wouldn't be so valuable in that case. It's only really valuable if your opponent has like mega tanks and all this stuff just piled up together, which you're probably not gonna see. So unless your opponent, because you're probably gonna build a black bomb first anyway. So yeah, I think they're good in certain situations, and certain situational units are not as good as these units, which are just always good. So yeah, I'll put it in A tier, but like not at the top. I'll put it probably near the bottom of A tier, probably like here. Stealths are the same story. I mean, bombers are just always good. Bombers can just hard counter anything. I mean, a bomber is probably only worth it if your opponent has like a medium tank or a Neo tank or something like that. A good target for the bomber. But a stealth, the point of a stealths want to cloak themselves so that they can hit things without being hit, because they're immune to anti-air. They can only be countered by fighters and other stealths. So yeah, I think stealth is pretty good here at the top of A tier, just below artillery. I think Neo tanks are probably better than bombers also. I've been thinking about that. And the reason is because it can't be countered by a unit that costs 8k. Like a bomber can get countered by an anti-air, or just 2 anti-air could completely shut down a bomber. A Neo tank, I mean, I guess you can argue it gets shut down by a copter or an artillery if an artillery is positioned well. But the thing is, the Neo tank can just wall break things as well, like unlike those other units can. So it's, yeah, I think Neo tank is slightly better than a bomber, just because it can't be countered by a unit that costs 8k that's a direct unit. So yeah, also a copter can attack a Neo tank and block it off or something, but it doesn't do that much damage. It does like 15% damage or something. It does a minuscule amount of damage. Whereas an anti-air just completely totals a bomber. So I would say that a Neo tank is better than a bomber because it doesn't have a hard counter in of the anti-air. Bomber is better than recon, medium tank, and black bomb. Yeah, I would say so. It's extremely useful. If your opponent has a Neo tank or a medium tank, you can just like build a bomber and just hard counter those units basically, and then your opponent's going to build a fighter, and then it's going to become a game of that. So, but a recon, but recons are usually always useful in high funds in the early game. So, like, I definitely build more recons than I build bombers. So I would probably say that I prefer recons actually. Whereas, I prefer to be the side with the fighter. Yeah. Now that I think about it, I'd rather be the side with the Neo tanks, the anti-airs, and the fighters, as opposed to the side with the bombers and the medium tanks. So I think, yeah, I'll put the recon a little bit higher, because a recon is like, it's very hard to not get a bang for your buck when you build a recon. Like, if you build a recon and you go and just trade it for 1 infantry, if that infantry had an important role, like capping 1 or 2 cities, it's really usually worth it, and it's very easy to get value out of the recons by doing that. So yeah, I'd say the recons are probably better, but I don't think they're as good as Neo tanks. Neo tanks are better than recons for sure. Again, bomber will stay there. Medium tank, yeah, I think this is a safe position for a medium tank. 16k just to basically thwart your enemy's tanks from attacking your base. Also, medium tanks, they hard counter these guys, right? Although they get kind of wall like shut down by artillery, but they're very good at dealing with tanks and anti-air, and they can just bully them for. And if it's an open map, then artillery can't. Yeah. I think mid tank is good where it is. We also agreed that this is good where it is. And fighter, I'm not putting fighter in B tier. Fighter definitely deserves to be in A tier. Fighters are underrated. If your opponent has a bomber and you get the chance to build a fighter, that fighter is going to be extremely annoying. Your opponent then has to build, the bomber side has to then build an anti-air to get rid of your fighter, because obviously you can't just let that fighter just fly around blocking everything. It's eventually going to get your bomber too, because it moves 2 squares more than the bomber, and once it does, it can then die, so it can then be used to like block things and be extremely annoying and sacrifice itself. It also gives a ton of charge. So yeah, I'd say fighters are really good. They deserve to be A tier, and I think their placement is pretty fair. Looking at the B rank units, I would say this is actually kind of accurate. I think Black Boat is at the top of B tier. Although I'm probably gonna move the T-Copter down a bit. I don't think it's as useful anymore as what it was before. I'm probably gonna actually put this here, and put the rocket in front, because a rocket at least can make threats. That these guys, I mean, capturing cities is threats too. You can definitely get value out of these. Although I think they're pretty close in value. I think it's something like this. Actually, I'm actually gonna put the lander above the mega tank too, because it's 12k to transport 2 units at a time. Any 2 ground units that you want at a time, and that's really good. Yeah. I think I'll put it like this. Yeah, I think this is good. C tier, yep. Battleship is probably the best. Then you got mechs, which are basically like worse infantry in my opinion, because they're 3k instead of 1k, and they're slower than infantry, but they have a bazooka. But like, it doesn't really matter, because the main use of infantry is just to be a blocker and just a capturer and just general fodder. That's what you infantry are best at doing. They're not best at fighting. Like units like this are built for fighting. It's kind of like it just needs to be fodder. It needs to be fast. Like fast infantry that can block things and capture things are just good. And this is slower, not as good at doing that, and it's more expensive. Therefore, it's not as good as an infantry. Carriers are better than subs because they can actually lock down airports and stuff like that. Whereas a sub is just a retaliation unit to this battleship. So that's why sub is pretty bad. Yep, and these are just meme units, right? I mean, cruiser is not a meme unit. I mean, I guess it can be, but it's just really crap. This is a meme unit that you built to taunt. This is a meme unit that you built to taunt. This doesn't even exist, and even if it did, it would suck. And cruisers suck because they're built to hard counter air units, but they don't even counter air units because the air units just kill it. Like bombers just one-shot them, copters two-shot them, so yeah, cruisers suck. They're basically a counter to subs, which is a counter to a battleship, which is just lame. Like, why the hell would you want to build a cruiser if you can help it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is my complete list. I don't think I need to change anything at this point. I'm pretty sure this is it. Yeah, that's gotta be it. That's gotta be it. This is what I imagined it would have looked like before I even started the list. Okay guys, so that's it. That's my tier list. I'm not going to change it anymore. That's where it's going to stand. So let me know in the comments below if you agree, you disagree, you think my opinions are based, you think my opinions are dumb. Whatever you think, I like to read it. I like the feedback, whether it's constructive criticism or you just want to make a joke. I read all your comments, and I really enjoy reading the comments. Like on my last videos, I literally spent like 3 hours in bed just like scrolling through comments, just reading them, liking some of them, replying to them. So yeah, I really do love reading your comments. Also, I'm getting closer and closer to my 1,000 sub goal, so if you could please hit the subscribe button down below. It doesn't cost you anything, but it will make my day a lot better, and it will motivate me to make even more videos, so please hit that button. Once again guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys sitting through a video that's like 40 minutes like this. Even if you skipped ahead, it doesn't matter. I still appreciate you guys for sticking with me on my YouTube journey. So yes, thank you very much guys. I hope I entertained you. Please subscribe. Yeah, peace out. Have a lovely day.